What's up, everybody? Today's guest is a good friend of mine. His name is Ryan, and he leads the genetics area of his family farm, which is a dairy farm. And we get real deep into the dairy industry. We talk about a little bit of the environment and the concerns there. And overall, conversation came easy. It was nice and loose, and we all had a great time. We're definitely planning on having him on again. And a little bit of an oversight. We didn't really give you guys an avenue to ask any questions to Ryan in regards to their dairy industry, but we'll definitely let you guys know ahead of time next time so that you can get your questions in, anything you want to know, anything we didn't cover this podcast. And I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome to the BxPerience.
See my glasses?
No, I haven't actually.
They're pretty cool. So they're like, it's a special lens. They're called FL41. And they're good for light sensitivity.
Yeah.
So I was having some issues with like bright, flashy stuff in games and even when I was driving, actually.
Yeah.
Like the trees on the road, you know how when you drive by and the sun's over there and each tree like casts a shadow and flickers the light?
Oh, yeah, it was making me like kind of disoriented.
Huh.
So anyways, I looked into it and this lens is really good for it.
Yeah, you don't see the pink ones. That's really neat.
Yeah, it's really cool.
They filter blue and green light. It's funny because when we were looking it up, it was like there's no they basically don't know the mechanics of why it helps light sensitivity, but in just all the combinations they tried, this one helped. So they're like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Good enough. You don't know why it works, but it works.
No, so. You find whatever light it is that kind of just helps your eyes adjust, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been talking to Gamer Advantage to see if they could find this lens.
Because we saw them at EGLX, and they do, like, they actually come from, like, an actual lens background and got into this. They were seeing all these companies doing blue light lenses.
Yep.
Because people realize that having a lot of blue light makes your brain think that it's daytime, wants to stay awake, and it strains your eyes as well. So then you would have trouble sleeping and this and that. So they got into the game, and their frames are like the coolest frames that I've seen. So they're like kind of that typical Ray-Ban shape, but they're soft and pliable. So when you wear your headset, it doesn't like pinch. You know how like dig into the side of your head, and then they also have, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure, like, you know, on the Ray-Bans, they have that little dot usually on the sides, the two, like...
Oh, yeah, like on the corner, kind of.
Yeah, on the corner.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty sure those are still there, but they're magnets instead.
Yeah.
Or they're or the magnets are on the sunglass part, I can't remember. Either way. Yeah. They have, like, a sunglass clip-on thing that's not all weird looking. Like, you can't even tell that it's clipped on. So you can use them as sunglasses which would be like great because and stuff. Jess is worried about going to like Tiesto and going to shows and stuff. Like that's something we love doing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I haven't gone since I started like having problems with the lights.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not just gonna stop going.
No.
I'm gonna try it, but like I'm nervous I'm gonna get there and have like some sort of problem.
Get like headaches or something.
Yeah, like headaches or get dizzy or nausea or something.
Right. Well, you've also haven't exposed yourself to like crazy shit since then. So like, what if you actually start seizuring?
Yeah, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, the risk of it, right? Because you just don't know. Yeah, that's true.
So
it's kind of scary, but
I'm kind of hoping that Gamer Advantage has like an option with maybe like the sunglass clip.
Yeah.
Maybe I can just wear those
inside
or something.
Well, even if you just, like you said, for driving stuff, then start wearing like night driving and stuff. Yeah. So even headlight flashing at you is similar.
Terrible. Like I was struggling with that the other night. We were driving home from Christmas Day, and
just
the headlights,
oncoming traffic.
Yeah, it was really bothering me.
Cars, which I can get. Like what's crazy is, I remember the one time it was like kind of bad, but not too bad for you, and you were saying that as soon as you thought about it. And you thought about it being bad, then you noticed every single flash.
Yes.
And then I was like, let me try. And then I was like, oh, that actually sucks. Yeah. Like if you start paying attention to every flash and like how it makes your eyes feel, like it's not that great.
Well, even my wife, same thing. She's like, when she's driving at night, she doesn't like it because she wears contacts, right? Yeah. So it's kind of that sensitivity to light. Just like she'll drive at night still, but it's preferred if she can't, she'll let me do it instead, just for that reason, right?
Well, that's always the way we've been too. Like just in general. Peter will generally drive.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I don't like to drive, but like more like I don't know.
You called me Peter again, Jessica.
I did, sorry. There's too many people that call you Peter.
I know.
It's rubbing off on me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It just makes me laugh.
I've known you too long. I call you way too many other things.
Exactly. Oh, man.
All right.
Anyways, our guest today
is
Ryan.
one of my childhood friends from way back in the Dizzy.
Yeah.
Back in high school.
Way back, playback.
Yeah. You're my reference when people ask me at work. They're like, "Oh yeah, so you work on dairy farms? They're like, you grow up dairy farm?" I'm like, "No, well, I kind of grew up on one."
Indirectly.
Indirectly.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I would go to his house like every day when I was working here, working nights.
Yeah,
I would go to his house at like 8 a.m. every day, right after work.
Yeah,
that was my routine.
Kind of worked out pretty well. I was done morning chores, then come back for breakfast. Peter would come out for like an hour, hang out and stuff, and then try and go back to work.
Try, keyword try.
Try.
Yeah. The best part was the milk and Cheerios.
Oh, so
amazing.
Good. You'll never. It's the best thing because we have milk straight from the bulk tank, right?
Yep,
so when it settles, perfect. You get that cream layer on the top. So if you don't shake the jug and pour it on, so good.
It's amazing. That is kind of something, I don't know. I mean, I could just get it from you.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just come over more often and just like take a little bucket.
What's the main difference between like straight in the bulk tank and what you buy in the store?
So in store, they heat it, like they pasteurize it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically cook it.
Yeah.
So you're buying cooked milk.
Pretty well. So it's kind of like, it's a process to get rid of all the bacteria.
Yeah.
So they'll heat it up and then cool it down really fast. So essentially it kills all the bacteria in the milk. So that's what, so when they say raw milk, it's kind of funny you said that, to take a bucket from our place and stuff. That's actually illegal.
I know.
Because the way it sits now, it's just the risk.
That was a hypothetical scenario, guys. Because it's not actually going to do that.
Yeah. But it's the problem with it is that bacteria, right? So it's like, I've drank milk out of the bulk tank my entire life. So raw milk is nothing to me because my guts build up everything to fight the bacteria and stuff, and it digests fine for me. But if a lot of people are susceptible to those bacteria, so if they take raw milk in, there's a chance they may get a part of E. coli or some other bacteria in them, and it'll make their gut really sick. So that's why pasteurization is a common process, just to make it a cleaner product, basically, for everyone to drink at home. Yeah. Because
it's kind of one of those things where, like, you have to be safe for 100% of people.
That's it.
As opposed to safe for 98% of people. Mm-hmm. You can't have that 2% that, like, might get E. coli from drinking milk.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because there's a lot of studies and stuff that people see the benefits of raw milk, and it does help the other person because, like, the extra fat components to it and stuff. Because, like, for the fat side of things, like in stores you get like skim 1%, 2%, or 3.75 is homo, I think it is.
Yeah, or 3 point something.
Like that.
3 point something.
Something like that. But like at our home farm, it's naturally 4.2% coming out of the cows. And that's on the lower end. If you get some breeds like your Jerseys, your Brown Swiss, it's it's like 5.5.
Wow.
But what they'll do is they take all that milk in, take all the fat away from it so it's down to skim, and then add back in what they want. So then the additional fat that doesn't go back into the fluid milk will be used for yogurt, ice cream, cheese, all that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
And that's how they'll produce all of that. And it's all structured under a different thing too, because Canada's a little weird that way, I guess you could say, because Canada Dairy is what you call a supply managed system. So basically what that is within Canada, we regulate the amount of milk we produce so that we can sell it back to our country. So
yeah.
And as farmers, we have to buy the right to produce milk, basically, in Canada. So what that does is a few things. So for supply demand, so basic economics, what it'll do is it caps your supply at a certain number. So it means you know how much you're going to produce, you know how much you're going to have to sell. Mm-hmm. So in a roundabout way, you don't have those volatility in prices. So as farmers, we're guaranteed a steady paycheck, basically, is how it works.
Okay.
So
that's nice.
It is. It makes it easier for us because it's a stability side of things, right? And it allows us to increase quality instead of quantity.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, south of the border in the States, they're not supply managed. So right now they have a big issue with the amount of supply they have because farms are producing an obscene amount of milk down there and they're having trouble selling it.
That's their form of security is volume.
Yeah.
Like the more they can produce, the more stake they have in the market, the more stable they're gonna be. So and
because their products more places.
Yeah, well, they think when they can make more of it, that it'll basically flood the market, and they're going to be the only ones supplying it, right?
Yeah.
Which, in a sense, works. Like, if we got rid of our supply management system, Canadian dairy would be basically gone because the U.S. milk would just come north of the border and take us over.
Be eaten up.
It's like they make a lot more than us, but we have a lot higher quality standards.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of regulations and stuff. We're inspected annually, and we have a pretty strict system on like animal care, biosecurity, food handling, all that stuff. And Canadian dairies are, well, we're number one in the world for it all, and we have been for a long time. But it's I don't know. It's one of those things because there's very good farms in the States. I've toured a lot of very, very good dairies down there, but it's a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a sickness, I guess you could call it, because you joke around about this. So when milk price is really good down there, they're like, we have a lot of money. Let's expand and build and milk more cows, right? Yeah. But then the price drops through the floor because they don't have supply management. They're like, oh, we're not making money. We need to milk more cows. So
it's gross.
It is.
And that's kind of gross.
And that's where the problems get, because then you get to 2,000, 10,000, 20,000 cows. And it's hard to manage on an individual basis when you get to that big.
So it's damn near impossible.
It is.
Damn near. Especially when because like I've seen a few of the videos of what is that the one that goes in like undercover and like takes videos of the PETA? No, it's not PETA. It's like Association for something of something.
Oh.
Anyway, it was like a big thing about there's a farm in Indiana, something Oaks.
Fair Oaks.
Fair Oaks, yeah. Anyways, like the main thing that I saw there was because it's so big and you have, say, I don't know, it may not sound like a lot, but maybe like 50 to 100 employees. But they're spread out on a farm. They're everywhere. The managers can't watch everything. And you're just picking up people and barely giving them training. Yeah. And then like firing them when you want to. So then you hire new people. It's always new people coming in. You don't know what they're doing to the cows. Like you know how they're doing stuff. And then how do your vets manage like 60,000 cows? That's insane.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Like how do you have a team of people able to keep that many cows healthy and taken care of? You're not.
It's hard. There's some that have the protocols so in place that it kind of works, because I remember we went to Wisconsin and there was a farm. They had 5 separate farms, and I think the lowest was 2,500 milking on those 5 farms. So they had like well over 30,000 collectively, but they had their protocols so in place that calves would go to a farm in, I forget, like a state over, and all the calves were raised there. And then they go to another farm where they're raised up, and it's very...
what's the word? It's compartmentalized.
Yeah, it's
so
like...
that you can manage your own unit.
Yeah.
Like your team takes care of one thing.
And that's
we're taking care of calves from this age to this age.
Right.
That's all we need to focus on. It's a lot easier to manage that stuff.
That's it.
Sure. And I've heard good things about Wisconsin farms.
Yep.
That's a lot of the farms that... like a bunch of the De La Valle and Norwell people will go down and visit them and like take a look at like what's going on, how they do these large scale farms. And I think that's where you visited some down there, right?
Yeah, we went into a few. They're just massive, but it's very cool to see because it's a different climate, it's a different challenges and everything. So it's kind of cool to see how they try to tackle these challenges versus how we do at home. Because biggest thing I noticed down there is a lot of irrigation. So it's basically they put water on their crops through like pumps and sprays and that kind of stuff, right? To water all their crops. Well, up here, like we do what you call tile draining. So basically we have to put pipes in the soil to be able to take the water away because we have too much up here.
A lot of water,
So it's like it's
surrounded by water.
It's but it's totally opposite scenario, right? Like you see a little bit of irrigation up here, but very little. And down there everything's irrigated. Everything. But
side note, I saw this really cool video. I can't remember whether it was an irrigation system or just a crop spraying system, but this guy rigged up balloons. So like helium filled balloons, went across the entire field, and then like it held the tube above and it had sprayer nozzles, and he was walking it. Like him and another, I think it was him and another guy, or him and his wife or something. They were walking this thing just down the field, spraying the whole field.
That's kind of
at one time. I was like,
Hey.
When we were down in the States too, I saw crop duster for the first time, like the little planes that'll spray whatever on the fields. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Talk about adrenaline junkies.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh, you have to like duck down, spray a field like 5 feet off the ground and get back up before you hit the tree line. Like it's a short life career.
That's crazy.
Oh, it was crazy.
Actually, one of my coworkers, his buddy, I don't remember whether it's the guy with the drones or not. I don't know. One of his friends, anyways, they're all gearheads, but they actually started a podcast before we did about like drifting and stuff. And his buddy takes videos with the drone, like by the cars drifting. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyways, he's a crop duster using a helicopter. Like I think he most like recently got his own helicopter and like makes a shit ton of money.
It makes a lot more sense for like a helicopter or a drone. Something can be more stationary, right?
Yeah.
What, an airplane? What do you mean?
My cousin had a job one summer with some sort of city spraying sewers to stop
mosquito
population.
Did he have a little scooter? Because I always see them around on the scooter.
So the one summer he did it on like the scooter. And you walk around and you spray the drains. But he did something in a plane the next year.
Oh,
a plane or a helicopter, and I forget.
Probably certain areas where the mosquitoes are like real bad, like swampy areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny. You don't think about that kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis.
No, I remember seeing the one chick on a scooter at this university, and I think she had like a safety vest. It was so goofy. Like she had a safety vest and a helmet, but then she also had like a holster for a spray can.
Right.
And she had 2 different colors. I think one on each leg. And then so she would like roll up to the like storm sewer and then like inspect it and then like spray the thing in and then like exit with the color or put the other color on and like holster her spray can and like drive off.
Do a little spin in the air first and throw it in.
Wild West.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
It's funny.
Yeah.
There's worse jobs to do for the summer.
Yeah,
definitely.
Oh yeah.
No, it's not bad.
Still remember that show Dirty Jobs on Discovery Channel where Mike Rowe had to help the llamas mate or the alpacas.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, just reach around. They're not very good at this. You just gotta assist it. Come on, get it in there.
Facial expressions on it. It's like, oh my goodness, what am I doing right now? It's funny, I watched that show for a while. I'm like, that's like my day-to-day life, you know? That's what I do every time.
For real.
Yeah.
How many cows do you have on your farm?
So we're milking 110, but we raise everything up from young stock, so hit the ground right up till they're too old and we need to find another route for them. So altogether, we have around 300 cows collectively for all the age brackets.
And how much milk does that produce on like a...
So right now, our cows are averaging 38 liters per cow per day.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, so it is a lot. So I think... Oh, what a cow!
That's a good number.
Yeah, so every other day we were 7,200 kilos every pickup, which is every other day for us.
Although it's just crazy to think of because we were just talking about how big.
Yeah.
Like some of the farms in the States are like 25, 30,000 cows.
Well, they're big.
Like that's a ridiculous amount of milk.
They're literally milking like 24/7, and some of them have actually. I think Norwell just got approved for a like a silo tank of some sort. Anyways, like what they have down there are literally silos or straight to truck.
Yeah, I was gonna
where
say.
the trucks will back up and be filled while the cows are milking because so much milk is coming out that they literally back up, fill up, and leave.
Have
the next truck comes in.
4 trucks at a time or something.
Go.
Yeah. It's an efficiency thing, right? Because like at our farm, we have what you call a bulk tank, which is essentially a big stainless steel tank that has cooling plates in the bottom. So we can house milk for, like, we have the capacity to house milk for 4 days, basically, for the amount we produce. And that's by regulations from Dairy Farmers Canada, because it's one of those things. We live in Canada, there's snow. It happens. There's some times where trucks can't drive around and stuff. So it's one of those things, because we are producing a food product. You need strict regulations to make sure that food stays good, right? So like I was saying, we have a bulk tank at our farm, so we can cool it and leave it there. So when the truck comes every other day, it's sitting at 2 to 5 degrees and ready to roll. But like you're saying, for those big farms, bulk tanks don't make sense because you fill them too fast. Or you have to get such a big one, it's inefficient to cool the milk. So basically what they'll do is they have the cooling system in the pipelines. So from the time it goes from the parlor through the pipelines to the truck, it's cooled. So it's a pretty straight straight operation that way.
Gotcha.
But
Is there any sort of because there's like lots of different brands of milk?
Yeah.
Is there like a certain brand that your farm goes to?
I think ours goes through Nielsen's specifically,
Okay.
but
You probably drank your milk.
maybe. It's hard to say because how Canada works with supply management is they do milk pools. So in certain areas, they'll get all the milk and allocate it to certain dairies within the province. So right now, we're at a bit of a stalemate for production because Southern Ontario is blowing up in milk production right now. And out in Eastern Ontario to Quebec, that area is softening a little bit just because the way the market's going, a lot of your smaller herds are having a tough go at it to try and make their bottom lines. So they're selling out because of it, right?
Yeah.
So with supply management, when they sell out, that quota, which is the license for us to produce milk, gets sold to another farm, which majority is being bought up in Southern Ontario. So it's all getting switched over. So right now, our milk truck driver is having to ship milk to Quebec every 3 days, which is a little silly because that's like it's like a 6-8 hour drive one way for a truckload of milk. But since it's pooled, that's the closest processing plant that you can send it to, right? And then from there, your big guys like your Nielsen's, your Parmalat will buy the milk from them and put it in whatever food product they want to put it into, basically, is what it is. So to say like our milk is in those 4-liter bags, Nielsen's milk or whatever, you can't really say that because it might be like 2% of one bag, maybe.
Oh, gotcha. It gets mixed in with other stuff.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
So it's like at the farm, they'll take a quality sample of every farm that they collect from, so they know if something does go wrong or whatever, they can look back and figure out who it is and let them know or whatever, right? And
there's like a scoring system called the BxPerience, where at a certain threshold you'll get a warning. At a certain threshold you get a penalty, and then so many penalties, like you start having real issues. Yeah. So
that's what I was saying back with the quality standards. So for Canada versus the States, like there's the BxPerience, what you're saying is like the bacteria count in the milk line and the milk and stuff like that. The other one that you look at is called somatic cell count. Okay. So basically what a somatic cell is like a white blood cell in a person. It's that cell inside you that fights infection. It's the one that tries to help clear problems. What happens in a cow is in the udder, sometimes bacteria will go up a teat end and will cause what you call mastitis, which is a bacterial infection in the udder itself. Okay. So when there's that infection there, the cow's immune system will send somatic cells to that udder to try and fight it. And what it does, it comes out as very clotty milk, is what we see on our end, basically, right? Yeah. So we treat those right away. Like whenever you see them, it's one of those things, get right on it. We have an intermammary antibiotic that we'll put in there to try and fight the infection. Gotcha. But you have to watch, because if you have cows that are starting to elevate somatic cell counts and you're not realizing, we get penalized as a farm if they take a high cell count milk. So like as they do a cumulative sample of the bulk tank, our penalty level is 400,000. The American penalty level is 1 million. Wow. So it's one of those things. It's kind of gross if you think about it, because well, I shouldn't say that. Like, it's still,
is, though.
It is. Yeah, I know, it is a little gross. Like, it's still a quality product down there. Yeah. Like, it's still edible. It's fine, that kind of stuff. But when I said that with supply management, we can increase quality over quantity, that's where it comes in, right? Yeah. Because it's one of those, we can only produce X amount of milk as a farm, so why not make it out of the best cows we can? You know what I mean? So you're going to drop cell counts, going to drop bacteria counts as much as you can, take care of them a little bit better. Yeah. All that kind of stuff.
Well, and with smaller farms, it's much easier to do that as well. Do you have, so when you have like your quota, and you know how much milk is going to be bought, how much milk I guess you can produce. Yeah. Does that determine like how many cows like you would get that year, or?
Exactly. Yeah. So it makes you manage the farm a little different, right? So you can only produce a certain amount of milk, like you're saying. Yeah. So in that way, you don't want to have too many cows, because then you're feeding cows for milk you're not getting money for. Yes. So if we overproduce what our quota is, they will take it and they'll sell it, but we don't get paid for it, and we have to pay the transportation cost on it, because it's getting sent wherever, right? So as a business, you want to avoid that, obviously, because then you're losing money, basically.
So you have to make at least as much as you've sold.
Right.
but you don't want to go too much over that.
Exactly. So that's where you manage your cow numbers and stuff. And then for us, like we milk around 110 cows, like I was saying. We're actually dropping in cow numbers right now because I've been breeding more elite genetics. So when you have cows that produce over 40 liters, I can get rid of a girl that has 25 liter average, you know?
Yeah. That's cool.
I'll save money.
Yeah.
Because you're feeding less.
Exactly.
Let's talk about genetics because I like that.
Before we hop into that, okay, we'll talk about genetics because that is very cool. I want to touch on that. I don't know if you know this. Do you know where the inspection system comes in the States? Because I remember the one thing that's interesting to me is that because of their system down there, you have farms that will produce or partner with a producer or produce their own milk. Like literally put it in bags and sell it as their own brand. Like Fair Oaks is one of those. Yeah. That you have Fair Oaks on the store shelf. Because you go into a private contract with the grocery store to sell your milk. So then
or like through a co-op is another one.
Then now I'm wondering, because with us in Canada, you have this other company that's in charge of picking up your milk. All you do is sell it to them, and the inspector comes, and the milk truck driver as well taking the sample, like they're always watching. Now, if you produce your own milk, who's stopping you from like paying off Joe Blow to become an inspector and let your shit pass every time and produce your own milk so that you don't get penalized? Like, I don't know how. It sounds a little dicey.
It is, and that's a bit of the gray area too, because like there are raw milk sales, but it's an illegal practice. Yeah. I know there's a guy, Michael Schmidt was a big one a while back. He's very pro raw milk, and he fought legislature and went like to the nines fighting against it to try and let people have raw milk and stuff, right? And it's one of those things, it's kind of, there are small sales of raw milk, but the problem as a producer is that's like almost black market sales. Like it's one of those things that never really gets brought up until there's a problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then the scapegoat is blame the farmers, right?
Yes.
So then that's where it gets a problem, because like we don't have, as farmers, we really don't have anything to hide. We really don't. We're very nice people. But it's one of those things when you get legal battles and stuff, and then everything gets messy and ugly, and it's just better to try and avoid it, right? So that's where a lot of our legal practices come into place to try and protect us as farmers, right? Because raw milk's not a bad product. It's really not, but it's dangerous. Like there's a
risk involved.
There's a risk involved.
That's why you can't go into it either not knowing about the risk or just do it without telling people about the risk. You know what I mean? It's like if you could have a system where you could sign a waiver saying I let go of all responsibility. It's my responsibility if I get sick. I'm purchasing this product. We'd all be like on the up and up and be fine. But that's not a feasible solution. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work.
That's it.
But anyways, genetics.
Yeah. No, it's kind of, it's a very interesting topic, I find, because that's where I have the most interest at our place, because I'm a cow guy. I like the animals. I always have liked the animals.
And you have the most, to preface this, you have the most calves like that I've seen on most farms. Like most of the farms that I'll go to, they buy most of their cows. They buy and sell their cows, and then the cows that they have are just the cows that come from their cows, and they either sell the calves or whatever. They're not really into that, but
we've had a lot.
So a lot of calves. It's
kind of, there's a lot of different ways you can work at genetics. So the basic start is breeding, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you need a bull to match with a cow to make a calf. Simple biology, right? So the things that have really changed in the past is, say 40, 50 years ago, whatever, having a farm bull was 110% common. Everybody had a bull on their farm, and he would breed everybody and do their thing, and away you go. Now, things have changed in the sense that genetics have become a lot more elite, especially in Canada. Like I was saying before, with that quality over quantity thing, we've been allowed to produce, well, not allowed, I shouldn't say that, just with us increasing quality, we have some of the best breeding stock in the world, like by far the best. So companies like Select Sires, CMEX, stuff like that, they house bulls for them, and they'll take the best in the world, go Europe, everywhere, shop around, bring them to a housing facility where they'll actually collect the semen from them. Yeah. And then we buy those straws of semen in and breed the cows with it. Yeah. So I'll do the breeding on our farm. It's AI is the terminology, like artificial insemination. So basically the nice part about AI is a few things. So one, you don't have a bull on farm because it's nice that they do the job for you, but they are dangerous. Like it's one of those things, if there's ever a bull in the barn, you never turn your back to them, because it's one of those things, like they could be the calmest guy and it'd be totally fine, and there's just that one day they just click, and it's like they're 2,500 pounds. Like they're not little animals, right? So it's a safety thing.
Whereas cows,
even the cows scare me sometimes. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah.
But cows are more like a lot more docile.
They're handled a lot
cows,
more.
Yeah.
The ones that are handled a lot are the ones that are calmer around people, right? So that's the big difference with dairy and beef cows, for instance. Like beef cows get a bad rap on them, that being crazy cows and all this stuff. Well, they're
not around people.
No, they're in a field. They're walking around with their girls, doing their thing, way off anywhere else, you know what I mean? They're not like dairy cows that are handled twice a day every day, right?
Whereas I'll go into some farms and like depending on how often like the people there are around the cows, they'll have different temperaments. Like the one farm, literally anyone except for the farmer or someone who goes there all the time, they won't do anything that you want. Like I tried to push a cow into the robot to check something, these cows wouldn't have nothing to do with it.
I know.
They'd just run away. They'd like go to run away from me towards where I wanted to push them, and then joke right. And they're like, no, I know what you want, I'm not doing it. And then as soon as I leave the room, they're like, oh, okay, I'll go inside.
They're funny animals.
They're hilarious.
Sometimes the little personalities in them, it's crazy. That's one part I love about it. They're all on individual, right? And even back to genetics, we were saying with temperament, that's another part that you can select for it. Yep. Like there's certain bulls that are known to be more docile and stuff, and there's some bulls that are known to be better in robots. And
then at the other end of the spectrum, I'll go into some barns where the help and the farmers are in there all the time, and these are like the friendliest cows you'll meet. You'll be walking by them, and they'll like nudge you, and they'll like nudge your hand, and like start eating your clothes and stuff.
Whatever they can wrap their tongue around, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's cool that way. So then you have the safety side of the bulls. So that's not like around. So that's one nice thing. The other part is you can access the best genetics in the world. You're not limited to that one bull. So like at our place, we have a nitrogen tank, and I think I have almost 20 bulls on count at one time. And so it gives you that selection, that choice, right? Yeah. So then you can match. It's a big matching game with breeding. So it's basically, you want to pick a bull that is really strong in a trait that the cow you're matching it to is a little weaker. So that if the dice rolls 100% perfect, you're going to have every strong trait in that calf, right? Yeah. It's really hard to do. It's a lifelong challenge for everybody. Yeah, so it's one of those things. You breed the best you can, but then it's... I don't know. And that too, you get these semen straws, you can check the like health and fertility of the semen in the straws as well. Okay. So that you'll know that you're getting an elite product, basically.
And then, in my head, this is how it would work.
No worries.
As you go through like the generations and you're inseminating the new cows that you've already bred with traits, they just get stronger and stronger and stronger, right? Like over time.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Because then you try and improve every generation.
Yeah.
And realistically, that's the way it should happen, but it's that roll of the dice genetically, right?
How long does it take for a calf from its newborn to, I guess like when you would like milk it?
So they'll start milking right after their first calf. So we start breeding them at about 12 months old. Okay. And then they'll get pregnant hopefully within the first couple months. It usually takes 1 or 2 attempts, and then I'll usually catch them. It's a 9-month gestation, and we try and aim for them to calve around 2 years old is their first calf.
Okay.
After 2 years old and that first calf comes out, they start milking. And how the cycle works after that is they'll be on milking for 305 days, which is essentially 10 months.
Okay.
And then after that, they go into a 2-month dry period, what you call, which is basically their vacation. They go out on pasture, hang out, just relax for a while. And then after that 2 months, they'll have another calf, and then they're back into the milking stream again. So when they're milking, we start breeding them at 60 days in milk, which means they've been milking for 60 days. Yeah. We'll start trying to breed them then, and then we usually stop trying if we can't catch them past about 230 days around that mark, because past that it's...
And so if you said you're milking like about just over 100 cows, right?
Right.
So how many cows are like in their dry period?
We'll usually have around 25-30 hanging out in there at one time. So that's partially the mature heifers that are about to have their first calf as well.
Oh, okay.
We have them all grouped together as well. So they're the bred heifers is what they're called. But the older ones, when they get bigger, we try and keep them with the cows or a social side of things.
Yep.
Because cows are very, very social animals. They're very social. So one of the things that you try to do is when you move them, you always move them in groups. Because if you move individuals, they get bullied. Because there's what you call boss cows, boss animals. In every group, there is always a few that just run the show. Yeah. And everybody leaves them to do their thing, and they are the highest one on the hierarchy, you know?
They get out and everyone gets out of their way.
Yep. It's
get first pick of food.
It's funny. It really is. Hilarious. So knowing the cow behavior, we manage them a little bit differently. So especially when they're around their calving time, it's when they're most susceptible to not eating or feeling off or having issues with calving and that kind of stuff. So they're the most sensitive right then. So that's when we try to mess with them the least. So basically, there's no moving them. There's no running around with them. There's nothing that'll get them worked up, basically, as you try to avoid. Just so that when they do calve, that there's minimal complications afterwards.
Yeah.
Because, like, the best way to describe a dairy cow is they're like a race car. So they burn real bright, they burn real fast, and then die out. Because it's one of those things, we've bred them over generations to be really high-producing cows, right? Yeah. Like a cow 50 years ago would be nowhere close to a 38 liter average. Like it'd be like a 15 to 20 liter average. Yeah. So it's over time, we've bred these ladies to be elite producers. So they milk really well, but like an average lifespan for a cow on our herd is about 8 years old. Yeah. And then they're passed away basically, right? So then by the time they go to the end of their career, what usually ends up happening is they'll go to Olex and Kitchener and get sold off as a beef cow.
Gotcha.
So when they're near the end of their career, we try to time it so that they're still in a healthy enough state that they can be transferred and moved around, but they're old girls at that point, right? So it's a sensitive thing. You transfer them very cautiously and stuff, but then they're used in a lot of ground beef and stuff like that.
And the male calves, they get sold like almost instantly.
We sell them at a week old.
Yeah.
But so the guy that buys them from us he has a few farms that he'll buy them from, and that was one of those things. Like the whole veal production has been pretty slammed in the past as well, because there's some tough producers out there. There's what you call crate housed veal, which essentially is a small stall that the calf is housed in all his life, and it's not that great. It really isn't. The science behind it is when they're in these crates, they can't move around as much, so they make a softer meat. It's a softer product for people to enjoy and stuff like that, right? But crate house veal is pretty non-existent now. Yeah. Like there's some, but not many. A lot of them have switched over to group housing. A lot of it is an infrastructure thing, because think of it, you're building one big pen for 20 calves or individual stalls for 20 calves. Yeah. So it makes more sense on a producer side to group house, plus the social side, what we were saying. Yeah. We toured the farm actually because we were trying to figure out where to sell our calves to, and the facility is phenomenal. Like it's really nice. It's one of those, they have free choice access to hay and water and all that all the time. They're in a group with like I said, 10, 15 others, and they do their thing. They're people that watch the pens every day and go around, check if everyone's healthy and all that, right? So then those boys are raised up to, around 6 months old-ish. Yeah. Something around that, and then they're slaughtered for veal, is basically how they're used. Because a lot of the negative stigma is that they're slaughtered at about 2 weeks of age, which is not true.
That's what I wanted to. I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to clarify that for people, because a lot of people think, especially because it's South Park. Yeah, South Park started that because they had the episode of like the veal calves that were like chained to the ground, and they're like they look like calves, but at 6 months, like that's a big animal. Yeah, they are. Right? Like how heavy is a veal calf? Like
at a 6 month old, you anywhere from 700-800 pounds probably. Yeah. Oof. Like they're big.
They're big.
700-800 pounds. It's like just under a ton. That's big.
And do you have any do you have any that you sell specifically for like genetics or breeding, like star calves?
For our farm specifically, no, because the way it's gotten now, there's a whole program called genomics, which basically what that is they'll take a hair sample of the calf when it's on the ground, and basically the end of the hair follicle is a DNA sample, right? they can run that DNA sample and essentially predict how good he's going to be when he's breeding at a year old or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 75% accurate or something like that. So
Okay.
it's fairly accurate. So you get a lot of those real elite farms that'll start running genomics, and then they put their bulls into the sire mix, I guess you could call it, whatever. And those are usually the ones that get bought up because it's like 0.01% of the world's bull calves are ended up using as AI studs.
Yeah.
So like you'll get the odd one you could sell as like a farm bull to a local farmer or something like that.
Not very common.
Not very common. It's really hard to get like a stud into the AI system or whatever. Because even now it's got to a point, there's farms like CMEX have their own home farms. So they'll go around and pay an obscene amount of money for the best cows in the world, the best bulls in the world, and make their own bull calves.
Yeah.
So it's like they have the money to be able to go out and buy a $250,000 cow.
And they're already in the infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not trying to sell a bull to themselves, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if you're trying to get into producing a bull for like CMAX, like you need to sell it to them.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot more sense for them. And like you said, like as you accumulate the money, you can spend more money on that to make your business better because you know it's going to your company.
Yeah.
The semen's going to your company and not a different company that's your competitors. So.
And like if you have a really good bull, you can shop them around. There's a lot of smaller AI companies in Canada that could buy them up. Like they're a lot more common in the States because, States have an obscene amount of AI companies.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, you can start it up and you have 15 bulls and you sell them around and you do your thing that way, right? But it's the companies like CMEX and Select Sires, they only have a certain amount of farms that they'll deal with typically. So they'll only shop from like 6 high pedigree farms plus their own or something, right?
Yeah.
So then you're going to get the same kind of quality and nothing with any bugs or diseases and that kind of stuff, right? It just keeps a cleaner environment.
Gotcha.
So they call it what you call a closed herd, basically. So basically they're not bringing in any external genetics that are foreign to what they currently have.
Yeah.
Basically. But, yeah.
Might be kind of cool to chat about kind of like what you do.
Oh, yeah. I guess,
like the different types of like milking and stuff.
Yeah. So, for those of you guys out there that don't know, I work with a company called Norwell, which is a distributor for a company called De La Val, which does milking equipment. And the interesting thing about De La Val is they're one of the few robot milking manufacturers that also does stalling, bulk tanks, rotaries, parlors, all the different types of stuff. And what a VMS is, a voluntary milking system, is essentially a little stall with gates on the front and back, and the cow can come in, get some treats, and a robot arm milks the cow and has all the equipment in there and then puts the milk into the bulk tank. So that's the VMS system. One of the most common systems, we'll start from the oldest one, is tie stall, which is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of reducing in popularity a lot.
Very much so.
Very much so, and for good reason, because you're basically taking the cow, chaining it to a post, and it stands there or lays there in the same spot for basically all the time, and you go to that cow with your milker that's on this little cart thing, little like track deal, and then it has like a pipeline that goes around and sends the milk to the bulk tank. Now, obviously, that's not the greatest for the cow. But it is good for milk production because you do it on your schedule. The cow doesn't move around as much.
It's got its pluses and minuses,
right?
right?
You can give more individual attention to the cow.
Right.
Easier to find the cow, obviously, because that cow's not going anywhere.
Right. Like we're saying, it is dropping in popularity, but a lot of that is the visual stigma of it, because like you said, they're tied up in their individual stalls and they stay there majority of the time. Now, a lot of the farms will let them out at night. Can't do that in the winter, obviously. No. But a lot of those farms will have pastures where they go out and then they clean all the stalls and do their thing. And it's very nice in the sense that each cow has its individual area. So it's like you know if they're eating, you know what to feed them, you know they're getting what they need. Like you can watch them because they don't move or anything.
You can give very individual care. You can change their feed to tailor it to that specific cow, and no other cow's going to eat it except for that one. And actually, one of the systems I saw that is the nicest version of a tie stall I've ever seen is at the University of Guelph. They have a really cool dairy research setup where they have every single different type of milking system. And they're always experimenting, doing research and stuff. And they have tie stalls that the cows aren't tied up. They're just in a little pen.
Yeah.
And then you can chain them to the side while you're milking so they don't, or headlock them so they don't, run around you when you're trying to milk them. But
try and stay in one spot for a short time.
Just stay there for a second.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty good setup.
It is. Yeah, and it's a lot of the tie stalls are for your showier herds. Like you get a lot of like the Royal Winter Fair or Madison, Wisconsin, like down to the World Dairy Expo, and it's a lot of people will try and strive to get those elite cows to show them, right? And that's where the tie stalls come in handy for the sense that one, you can see her on an individual basis. You can get pretty up close to see every part of it, and she's not going to get bullied by anyone else because that social structure we were saying before, right? So it's nice in that sense, but it's a higher infrastructure, like we were saying before with the veal. It's kind of, you have to have an individual spot for every cow, and you're very much limited on how many cows you can milk, because if you have 70 stalls, unless you're switching cows in and out all the time, and that's a lot of work, and a lot of people do it, but it's a pain. So if you have 70 stalls, you're typically milking 70 cows.
Yep.
And if you want to milk more, you need another barn. And that's not cheap. You know? Versus if like a robot, for instance, like you're saying, like ideal is around 50 cows, but you can fluctuate, right? Like
you have a bit of a floating range.
You do. So like
you do about 50 cows per robot?
Well, it depends on which one.
At a
so
time,
like
or?
the newer one, the newer ones we say about 60.
Okay.
And you can, like, on the older ones, we say 50, you can technically reach up to 65.
Yeah.
So it's usually a little bit higher, but you don't really want to, because you want each cow to have enough time, right? And because it's usually free flow traffic, like, they have to get into the rhythm, and then it can only do a certain amount.
Yeah. And they milk twice a day, right?
Well, ideally
Typically.
is actually 3 times a day.
There's some
depending on the cow too.
Yeah.
Like some cows will give the same amount of milk as another cow, but it's going twice a day, and that one's going 3 times a day, or maybe this one's going 4. That's the advantage of a robot.
Exactly.
Is that cow can get like its own routine how it wants, as opposed to like a parlor or rotary where like okay, we're milking this time, and this time.
And cows fill at different rates, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of no cow will produce milk in the same amount of time. So like the one system we haven't mentioned yet is a parlor, and that's pretty much the third one, but like that's what we have at our place. So in the parlor, we milk twice a day every day.
Yeah.
So they're used to those times when they come in, and it's a 12-hour interval between milking. So it's consistent that they're always ready to milk when they come in at those times.
Yeah. Versus
if you have a robot, like some farms will get 3 and change visits average, but you'll get girls that'll go in there 6 times in a day.
Oh yeah.
That's just the way they fill, right?
Yeah.
And there's limitations in the robot, so they can't just go in to get a snack and leave out again. But it's a lot nicer, especially when they first start milking, because in the first 30 days of a cow's lactation is when their milk will peak to the top volume they'll make. So when they're in their fresh period, they're going to be making the most amount of milk. They're going to be full more often and that kind of stuff. So having a robot allows them to go in more frequently when they first start, so that it'll kind of alleviate the pressure on them and they feel more satisfied, basically, is how it is. So for us, with the parlor, the one issue is when you bring fresh cows in, especially the morning milking, they seem to have a little more, they're leaking. So there's milk spraying out of their udders and stuff, which isn't a bad thing, but it poses a problem because it opens the teat end and gives the possibility for bacteria to go up. Yep. And that's mastitis. Yep. So it's one of those cleanliness things. You try and not have them leaking for the sense of trying to keep them healthier is basically what it is.
And it's uncomfortable for them too,
that's
right?
It. Well, that's it.
Sure. When they're full, like they're full. They want to get milked, right?
Yeah. Because like we were saying with 50 cows in a robot, basically the way the pens are designed is it's an open area that you have 50 cows in with feed access, water access, open stalls, all that, and a robot on the end so that they can just walk in and out if they want, and they basically work on their own schedules that way.
Yeah. There are some that have guided traffic, and some people swear by guided traffic, some people don't. Where a guided traffic is basically you have like a sort gate before the robot where the cow will come in, and if they have permission, they'll either go to the robot or they'll go to wherever. And sometimes you'll cut off the laying area and the feeding area. So to get from, if they want to go feed, they have to milk first, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So, and then like a one-way.
Well, I could see
here,
that
right?
could be. I could see that being better for like training them on the robot.
Yeah. It can be good. It can restrict traffic sometimes because they'll be less likely to move around.
The timid cows, right?
Yeah, timid cows.
When you see the timid cows have to go past these girls and through the gate to get up there, and they're lying down in the stall looking over, watching and waiting. So they'll be like, I'm not going to go yet. I'm just going to stay here instead, right? Like, I've seen them before in parlors where there's the little timid cows will be sitting in their stall, just eyes gazing right on the robot constantly. And they'll wait for an opening, get up, and go straight to it. It's funny. It's funny to watch them that way. Because then even for the free flow system, like, I have a neighbor of mine that has some brown Swiss cows in his herd, right? Yeah. Brown Swiss are very docile. Like, they're very quiet, very calm cows, which is nice and a pain in the butt all in the same time. Yes. And he has a few that hang out at the back of his robot, and he jokes around with the Brown Swiss Mafia because it's just they're just curious, right? Yeah. And they're 3 girls that just hang out there and do their thing, a little gossip, do the hang, and that way they go, right? But it's funny how they sit like that. So that's the one nice with the guided traffic is you don't have that resistance right at the robot, right? Yeah. They can just walk in their own route and do their thing, and then after they're done, a lot of the time they'll route it to the feed so that they'll eat again right after, which will start the whole milk making process again. Yeah. Right?
That makes sense.
Like, I've seen all kinds of different situations, and one of the most common one that's really annoying is you'll have a bossier cow sit at the exit gate of the robot, and the one cow's done milking and wants to leave, and the cow just stands there and pushes the cow back into the robot like, no, I'm not letting you move.
Nope.
Like, for no reason. Like, there's no reason for them to do it. They're just, like, asserting their dominance. They're like, yeah, fuck you.
Pretty much. Or you get ones that go in heat or stuff like that, and it's, oh my goodness, watch out. Those fuckers will run you over if you don't pay attention sometimes, because it's just that curiosity. When a cow gets in heat, because it's the eyes are up, they're perky, they're really attentive. One thing you can do to tell for heats is what you call a standing heat. So basically, a cow will mount another one from behind and just kind of stand on them. And if the girl underneath just stands still, that's an indication to a farmer that she's in heat and she's ready to be bred, right? Well, sometimes those cows in heat think that you should be the cow underneath, so they try and jump up on you, and then before you know it, there's hooves over your shoulder.
Oh my god.
And that's a little scary.
That's not a real good situation.
No, because it's a lot of weight, right?
A lot of cow.
Yeah, so it's...
A lot of meat.
I would collapse.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Oh, me too. Absolutely.
I think everyone would. I don't think anyone can hold a cow up.
No. So it's one of those keep your head on a swivel, right? Because the biggest thing with being a farmer in general is awareness. If it's tractors, if it's cows, whatever it is, be aware. Because it's a very dangerous job. It is. But it's one of those things, as long as you're aware and conscious of your surroundings and what's going on, that's 9/10 the battle. You kind of just go from there, right?
Yeah. When it was in the summer, I was at the exhibition in Toronto, and they had actually Norwell had a booth there. Yeah. And they had all sorts of different types of cows. Yep. And there were more cows than I realized. When you're driving on the road, you usually see brown, and I assume those are beef cows most of the time. I don't know. Yeah. And then you're spotted
black and white,
black and white cows, right? And I was amazed at all the different types that I saw there.
So for the dairy side, the big one is Holsteins, which is your black and whites.
Yeah.
So
the most common.
I think it's 95% of the industry runs with Holsteins.
Is that because they generate more milk?
Producers,
yes.
That's it, right? Their milk is a lower fat, but they produce a higher volume. So
and we skim the fat anyways,
exactly.
Right?
So as from a business perspective, from the economics, on a per cow basis, a Holstein will make you most money. And that's why that's 95% of the industry, right? Yeah. So then you'll go down. The next common is Jerseys. So that's your shorter brown cows that you'll see with the black noses and little bowl-shaped heads and stuff. So they're the next. I think it's 3
dogs.
They
are. We've got one farm that's all pretty much all Jerseys. He has 1 or 2 Holsteins, and they have a robotic manure pusher. So basically what it is a slatted floor. And then this little robot goes around and pushes the poop into the slat so it gets out and then gets flushed out. And I was trying to work on one, and every time I try to work on that thing, I've got the top open, they're reaching in, they're biting the wires, eating everything. They're pulling at my tool thing, they're tipping my tool stuff over. And if I leave anything within mouth reach, they're, oh, what's this? Oh, I'm taking that. Oh, I'm eating you. At first, I was trying to work on it in the middle of the aisle. Yeah. And I just I was trying to do something quick, and I opened the thing up and I started to try to work. One takes my Allen keys, and then the other, and 3 of them are eating my coveralls. I'm okay, I can't do this.
And they're talking to each other to figure out, you get that, I'll get this.
As soon as you'll look at them, you're stop, and then they'll back off a little, and as soon as you turn around, they're right back on.
Oh, the curiosity is so funny.
They're hilarious.
They're very funny animals.
Jerseys also have a reputation with robots. What they'll do is they'll go in, and there's feed in the little feed trough. There's feed pellets that are usually a lot tastier than the rest of their feed. So they'll eat that, and then the robot kicks them out because they're not supposed to get milked. And then they'll stand there, and if I push them out and like give them a poke, they'll leave, and then they'll go right back in, and then eat some more, and then right back. They'll just do laps in and out. So.
Goofy buggers, eh?
Yeah, they're funny.
Because I'm past that. Then brown Swiss is another common one. Well, so common. It's more of when you get past Holsteins and Jerseys, it's more the people that enjoy the breed. They just find them interesting and that kind of stuff. So then, saying past Jerseys, you get your brown Swiss, which are basically your giant gray cows with almost like mousy ears, is basically what they look like.
I feel like that might have been... There was one I remember seeing, and I was looking at it, I was like, that's a pretty cow.
Yeah,
I feel like it might have been a brown Swiss.
It could have been. I know the champion for Madison, Wisconsin has been a brown Swiss the last 2 years, which is uncommon because it's, like I said, Holsteins are 95% of the industry, right? So there's way more of them out there, but she's a beautiful cow, obviously, and yeah, she's won 2 years in a row now. But so then past brown Swiss, there's Guernseys, which are how do you explain Guernseys? They're like a very light brown and white, basically.
Okay.
They kind of look like your Holsteins, except a lot lighter brown than the red and white Holsteins, I should say. And then past that, there's Ayrshires and Milking Shorthorns, and that's pretty well all the dairy breeds.
Yeah.
Then when you get on the beef side, there's a lot of beef breeds.
The other one is Montbéliards.
So that's a recent.
That's pretty recent. Yeah.
So there's a couple.
They're like hybrids almost.
Hybrid breeds, yeah. So they're essentially a beef breed originally, but they have a bit of a milk component to them. So they've been starting to breed them into the dairy world to try and make hardier dairy cows, right?
Oh, okay.
So there's a couple breeds.
They are hardy.
Yeah.
They're built like trucks.
Yeah, it's like the one Peter said. And then there's Fleckviehs are another one. There's Linebacks are another one.
That's the brown Swiss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it... Yeah.
They are nice looking cows.
Mm-hmm.
I like the ears.
Yeah. Everyone jokes around their swamp donkeys.
Well, it's funny because they look like it's the gray because they look like water buffalo almost.
They do. Yeah, kind of. But they're like they're so quiet. They're such a quiet cow. Like they're one of those you smack them to get them going. Those turn around and look at you.
Yeah.
It's like what are you doing? Yeah. But yeah, like Peter was saying with the Montbéliards and stuff. Like there's a lot of people that don't like. The problem with Holstein cow, with them being such a high-producing cow, they're more susceptible to getting sick.
Yep.
Is because they're a little bit weaker of an immune system and stuff because they're producing such a high volume, so they need a higher amount of management. When you're breeding these beef breeds in, it makes them a little hardier, so you don't have to manage them as much. You're not treating as much and stuff, right? So it's, but they don't milk near as much either. So that's the trade-off. So there's a few farms that... Some of them have big cash crop operations. Some of them aren't big cow guys. It happens. It is what it is. And they thrive on these beef crossbreeds because that really works for their system, right?
Yeah.
So and they seem to work really well in parlors and robots, I find, from what I've heard at least. They have that attitude to keep coming back and stuff.
Yeah.
But so that's been, I don't know, the last couple of years I've been hearing about those crossbreeds.
Yeah, we did a startup with them and... Now they're going well. That was actually one of the first startups that I went to where they didn't eat out of the robot for the first 2 days. They just didn't eat. They're very stubborn.
They are.
When we were trying to push them in the robot at first, they're like, it's funny watching cows because even a small curve, like 3 inches, is like climbing Mount Everest sometimes. Like trying to get them to. They're looking at it. They're like. And you can't, it's so hard to move a cow. They're so heavy. Yeah. You're trying to push them from behind, and they just stand there. If they really don't want to move, they won't move.
No.
Until they decide they want to move.
Our vet joked around, there's you can push them for 5 minutes or wait for 5 minutes.
It's
your choice.
You just got to give them time eventually to get over it. But I would say the other thing, this is a smaller issue, but with those types of breeds are good if you have less than ideal infrastructure because Holsteins are very tall, their legs are very lanky, and if they fall, if they slip, cows slip, they're not graceful really. They look kind of goofy when they run is the best and they're jumping. But Holsteins are, I feel are more susceptible to injuring themselves if they fall.
Absolutely.
Or getting their legs hit, angled off something, whereas the Montbéliards are literally built brick shit houses. They're tanks.
Yeah, they are tanks. They're big. And one nice thing, you actually backtrack to that genetics talk a little. So there's a thing with that we call embryo transfer.
Okay.
So basically, you can collect eggs off of a cow, freeze them, and then you can implant them back into other recips. So you can essentially pick your elite genetics, take the eggs out of her, and then have more progeny from her instead of just her calf, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we do that. It's very common in the dairy world, especially the show side. Like a lot of embryo transfer stuff happens. But that's the nice thing with this beef stuff is you can get a few of those really good producing beef cross cows, take some eggs off of them, and then you get some more of the higher production with the hardiness to it, and it all kind of matches up together, right? Because like on that front, like there is crazy technology and stuff going into the whole embryo system. Like there's in vitro fertilization, like there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with it. It's crazy. It's
Do you think that we're gonna get to the? I mean, this may be a rhetorical question because I definitely think it will. And I think you will think as well. That it will get to the point where they're literally just gene editing for whatever types that they want.
See, I think they could, but I don't think they will because right now they're recognizing genes through natural breeding, and you're picking bulls and cows to match because of that, right?
Yeah.
If you start tampering with it, you're going to start bringing up external issues, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if you start...
That's fair.
If you start trying to recognize for a stronger rump on a cow, for instance, well, maybe you could have changed something that affects the immune system as well, and you're not quite sure, you know?
That is the same argument that goes for gene editing with humans.
That's it.
Where we really don't get it. We don't understand it yet. It's weird.
It's too complicated.
Yeah, we have the tools to do things.
Right.
But we don't know what those things do.
That's it,
like
right?
we can go in there and snip a gene like the guy in China did, but nobody knows exactly how that's going to affect anything else because they've found that, like you said, you change one thing, it may affect 5 or 6 other things.
That's it.
Well, a lot of the time, it's not something you see right away.
Right.
It's like long-term effects, 15, 20,
it may be something
years,
that happens near the end of their life. Or
by the time it happens, you might not even know why.
Yep, for sure.
Or like be able to relate it to what happened.
And it's a lot of it is the whole public view of it too, right?
Yeah.
Because then if like look at the outburst you get from the Beyond Meat burgers and stuff like that, right? Like it's valid process and stuff. You're using plant protein to make a burger, but it's like a test tube burger. If you say that to a random person, it's like, yeah, your burger was made in a lab. They're like, ew, I'm not eating this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if it's totally the exact same stuff. It's the stigma behind it.
Yeah, it's the idea.
So if you start saying that like all of our cows are made through genetic selection, like through genetic engineering and that kind of stuff, well then
I guess that's like GMO food, right?
That's it, right? Because I've had this argument with my friend a few times. It's kind of the whole difference between natural selection and genetic modification. It's because like natural selection is taking the best, breeding it to the best to hopefully create the best, right? Yeah.
But you're still letting like the natural pieces do the work.
Same DNA basically. That you're not inserting anything foreign.
Yes.
But then like if you go, what was it? I think it was strawberries had a gene from Arctic char to try and increase frost resistance in the berries. Something like that is GMOs. You know what I mean? When you're putting something external that doesn't naturally occur, then you're genetically modifying. Like my friend kept saying, well, natural selection is a modification of genetics, right? Like it's a selection of the same genetics, just the stronger form of them. Yeah. Is basically the best way to say it, you know?
The reality is pretty much everything that we consume is genetically modified
Very
in
much
some
so.
sense at this point.
Especially corn. Corn's the huge one that way, right? Like look at maize is what it's called. That's primitive corn. Look at that compared to what corn is now. It's
totally different. Well, that's I think that's the difference between genetically modified and genetically edited. And I think now that like CRISPR is a thing and you can actually edit genes as opposed to what we were doing before, maybe we can actually start using that term because it makes more sense because you're actually changing things. Like with CRISPR, you basically like tell a virus which gene to cut off, and it just goes and does it. Yeah. So you're actually physically going in there technically and snipping something off, which is a little different than picking a mom and a dad and hoping it like works out, right?
That's it, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with GMOs because we wouldn't be able to feed the world if we didn't have GMOs. No. It's straight up, we wouldn't be able to.
Corn, going back to corn briefly, corn's an interesting one because there's like no real nutritional value to corn, right?
No, it's one of the lowest. It's one of the lowest nutrient. It's the
Like,
least nutrient dense vegetable.
Like, why do we
ever.
produce so much of it? Isn't
Because
it really hard
you
on
can
the
make
ground?
sugar.
The versatility. Yeah.
Yeah.
High
Yeah.
fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
That is used in everything.
Literally,
Yeah.
if you go to the grocery store and you pick up almost anything, you're gonna find some corn syrup.
I think
in
it was
there.
something like 75 or 80% of products in a grocery store have high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
But it's the versatility, right? So it's the corn syrup, big. On a cow perspective, it's the cheapest feed to feed a cow.
Yeah.
If you take it off and ferment it into silage and feed it back on a per acre basis, it's the most efficient feed to feed back to a cow. It's used in ethanol production.
Yeah.
They use it in that, so it's back for your fuels, for your cars and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You can make flour with it.
It's
corn flour.
Corn flour.
There's
right?
all kinds of
Cornmeal.
purposes.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And if you look at the plant, it makes sense. Like, it's literally a straight stalk. It's very dense.
Mhm.
The stuff that you get out of it is very dense, and you can fit lots of corn stalks together because they're just straight sticks.
It's even
It's not like
now
a
if they
soybean plant that has to
Yeah.
spread out, right? It needs space.
And it's before you'd have 1 ear of corn on every stalk. Like
Yeah.
breeders now have got to the point that they double ear every stalk. So you're doubling the amount of corn per plant. And then you start, like, especially down in like the Illinois, Iowa, like the corn belt of the states, the amount of corn that flies out of there is absolutely unreal. Like it's wild. It's
They have to
stupid.
rotate the fields though, right?
You're supposed to. A lot of cash croppers will do just a corn and soybeans rotation,
Yeah.
which it's pretty depleting on the soil.
Or so yeah, I was gonna say, do soybeans replenish the soil or
So they'll put the roots of soybeans. There it is.
Okay.
They nodulate. So basically, they'll fix nitrogen in the soil.
Okay.
It's on the roots itself. So after a soybean crop and the roots are left in the soil, that nitrogen can be used to the next crop. But it also takes other minerals and stuff out of the soil when it's being made, right? So the biggest one it takes out is just organic matter, period.
Yeah.
So that's where you get a lot of erosion issues because the soil doesn't have the stability to it anymore. It gets a lot almost sandier, right?
Yeah.
Like it's when water can just wash the topsoil away and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know that we've been having an issue, I mean, probably for a lot longer than we've realized. Just with land not really being like rich anymore.
That's
yeah,
it.
Like,
and
we farm so much.
that 60, I think it was 60 or 66. Let's say 60. I think it was 66. Was I telling you about it? How in the States they have 66 harvests left in the soil.
Yeah, I've heard
Like
that.
that's fucking scary.
That is.
If that number is completely accurate, that's scary as fuck because that's a finite number that people can understand.
Yep.
66 times. And like how many, so up here, I'm sure it'd be different down there. How many harvests do we get a year?
You just do one.
Just do one.
Yeah.
So, but in the States where they don't have winter, do you think they would do two? Could they squeeze two in there?
It's not really for your grains. When you get down to like Brazil, you can. Brazil will double crop because I know like when they do their corn and beans, they'll just plant right behind the.
Well, they'd be like high moisture, high sun, like they got everything down there.
They might do a bit of it down in the southern states. I'm not totally sure.
Okay.
But it's
so the average would be one harvest a year.
Usually, yeah.
That's still not a lot.
It's still not a lot.
66 years.
Well, even look,
What are we
California.
gonna do after that?
California's got no water anymore. Like they had the issue last year.
Yeah.
They couldn't do that. Like what is it? The Ogallala Aquifer. Like there's a lot of like I don't know what it is, like X-ray vision to show how much water's under the ground. So I forget the terminology. It's not it, but they're showing how much it's depleting over time, and it's like it's a finite amount of water, so it's gonna drain eventually.
Yeah,
and that's the big problem because then there's a lot of the southern states that are having issues with agriculture in general from the drought and fires and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
But,
well, Australia's literally fucked right now.
Yeah, Australia's literally hell right now.
Yeah, exactly.
The Amazon. Remember hearing about the Amazon fires?
Yeah.
Do you know why those were? It's because they wanted to plant crops.
And
Someone started those on purpose, burnt rainforest, so that they can plant more crops because they're running out of land.
Yep.
Like and so here's
Has that been cleared up?
What do you mean cleared up?
Like did it stop? Like I don't remember.
I don't think they're still. I don't think they're still
stopped.
The Amazon itself is a lot of protected area, right? So I'd imagine it'd be pretty snuffed out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But
it was like I've seen some
for, like,
pictures. It was like it was a lot of
yeah.
that was a lot of forest to burn.
True.
So I think here's the thing because I saw a post the other day. I was reading the replies on it. It was kind of crazy. But it was just a video of the ice caps melting and then refreezing, melting and refreezing, and it showed you how much is over 4 years old. And it literally like dwindled down to almost nothing over the past like 10-20 years. And then all these people talking about climate change and this and that, and how it's like people are saying that it's just normal and like there's nothing we can do. And then there's like, well, it's not really abnormal for it to happen, and our effect on it is negligible. And then there are some people saying that they are climate scientists, and yes, like our numbers are being fudged because of funding. If we don't show that there's something to research, then we're not going to get funding and this and that, which I can kind of understand. Yeah, but at the end of the day, there's so much in a bigger picture that it's not just about how we're affecting global warming. Like, yes, that's probably an issue, and it's probably something we should look at. But it's also, how are we handling our water? How are we handling our soil? Like, what about fossil fuels? Like, where are we on that? Like, it's everything
your renewable resources.
Yeah, we're draining the earth of its blood. Right?
I saw an article, it would have been a few months ago, but it was literally a country, like a small island, that like 75 to 80% of it was underwater.
Jeez.
Like,
Jesus
it was like
Christ.
Gone. I don't remember what it was. Just a small island, like in the Caribbean area. But it was literally like 70-80% of it was underwater, and people had lost their homes, and like people had died, and like the water levels just keep rising.
That's not going back.
No,
it's not coming. It's not coming back.
No. Not in the foreseeable future.
Like
anyways.
you hear about Atlantis and like all this, like
well, there's multiple.
like
there's
a cartoon movie we watched, right? And
when
you're like,
we were
that's
growing
cool.
up,
Like, but like this shit could be real
Very
in the
much
next
so.
10, 20, 30 years. Like New Orleans could very well be underwater. Parts of California could be underwater.
A lot of Europe would be too.
Yeah.
A lot
well,
of
all the stuff in
Venice.
Is
already
is already very struggling.
Yeah.
We watched something. God, I don't know how long it was ago, but how they're putting in the barriers.
Yeah, the movable barriers, and like they're literally talking about it. They're like, no, this isn't the greatest solution, but it's a solution, and we have to do it. It's something that we have to do, or else the entire city is going to get fucked up. Because if they have a storm surge, the whole city is literally getting wiped out. Well, not the whole thing, but like anything close.
Wild.
So what they have is these. It's essentially like a massive, I don't know, paddle or like piece that in an instant gets filled with whatever gas that's compressed to expand to make it float, and it goes up like this and is anchored on the bottom, so then it's a barrier. So it's like an emergency barrier. If they have a storm surge coming, boom, goes up, and these things are massive. And it's like millions of dollars to make, but they're like, we have to do it. Like,
well, here's the thing: you have to. We have to look far enough ahead that we invest in stuff for our future now. We know that there's all these problems. We know they have to be solved. We might not have solutions to them yet, but if you're not investing in it, or at least trying to do something, like how people were talking about like windmills years ago. Like I was still in high school, and they were talking about building windmills. If all the fossil fuels are gone, and you haven't built the windmills yet, how are you going to build the windmills? Right? Like, I mean, I'm not saying we should build a bunch of windmills, but I'm just saying, like, you have to invest in it while you still have the resources to do it, so that you can continue to have the resources to do things. Because if we just keep waiting, like, we're not going to have the means to build anything.
That's it, right? Like, it's part, even back to what we were saying with, like, the land stuff for farming, like, there's green belts now, so you physically cannot do infrastructure in those areas because they're trying to, I don't know, isolate the more nutrient-dense land. For instance, because to try and, like, urbanization is a problem as farmers because you lose a lot of very good quality land to houses, which I'm not saying is a bad thing because people need places to live, but you got to be selective where you put them. Like, I remember when I was in university, somebody told me that the most fertile land in southern Ontario is Markham, Ontario, and it's all under concrete.
That's brutal.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those things, and you can't turn around and demo a town. You know what I mean?
No.
That's not going to happen.
You can't extract the earth out of underneath the pavement and move
do
it somewhere else.
Yeah,
Like,
it doesn't work that way. I know. So it's one of those things. You just got to be very careful on where you do things now, right? Like, there's a reason Southern Ontario is so ag dense, is because the soil is phenomenal. And that's the reason it's all conjugated there. Like, if you start going north in Ontario, it starts, you get less and less grains. You'll get a few beef
Or
cows,
rocks.
and then it's all rock. You get into
Rocks.
Canadian Shield, and you can't grow anything in that.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of just being selective where you put it now, right?
Well, and the tough part about that, like, they're talking about regenerative farming and how that's probably the most ideal way to do it going forwards, because they've done studies on it, how it's actually a carbon sink. Mm-hmm. So it actually takes carbon out of the atmosphere, because what you're doing is you have different pastures and you rotate animals through them. Mm-hmm. So, like, I don't know exactly what the process is, but it's something like you run your cows through the pasture, then you move them to a different one, you put your chickens in there, and then they poop and, like, eat the cow poop and add nitrogen to the soil, and then you rotate those out, and then you plant crops. Yep. And then when the crops, then you rotate.
Keep switching them around, right?
But the one thing is that there's a lot of, like, non-arable land, like rocky land. So ideally you want to use that as part of your interim pasture for the animals while you're growing the crops in the other pasture. Mm-hmm. However, like, I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's all well and good, but you got to have arable land beside that, right? Like, you have to have everything close together, because you're not shipping your cows 100 miles south just to go to pasture. Like, that's not going to work.
That doesn't make sense.
So you kind of have to make it work with what you got.
Going back to just kind of like cities and expanding and stuff, generally we just expand out from the city center, right?
Right.
And I mean, it makes sense why we do that, because people want to be close to jobs and things and other people and stuff, right?
Yep.
But like you said, we have to be smart about where we build. And I think overall, if we could just increase the ease of transportation to further places. I mean, we have like GO trains and stuff that come out this way now, but we didn't for a very long time.
Yep.
Like, people need to be able to get to those things to work and stuff, but
so that's actually one of the really cool things about that orbit concept in Innisfil. I don't know if you've heard of this. So Innisfil is going to be inundated with a bunch of money redoing infrastructure from the ground up. They're planning the expansion of Innisfil. And if you don't know where Innisfil is in Ontario, there's the GTA, so like your Toronto, Brampton, Mississauga, like your big city, and then about an hour and a half north of it is Barrie, which is another like smaller city, and then there's a spot just south of it called Innisfil. And they're planning on doing like a central hub system where you have your main city center and everything radiates out from that. And then that way you had like spokes on a wheel, like the old system, like you used to have castles built like this back in the day. Castle cities, where the castle's in the middle and you have the streets coming out like spokes. And then so it's going to be like that with public transit, where you'll be, no matter where you are in the city, you're within like 5 to 10 minute walk from public transit. It's easy to get everywhere.
Smart.
And it's right along the GO line, which is like the main train line that connects it to the city. Yeah. So this is going to be an easy spot. I'm pretty sure you would be able to live in Innisfil and work in Toronto with like less than an hour commute.
No, that's neat.
I think, because you would be on the train line.
It's smart. You may as well, right? Like, try and make it a lot more simple, make it more integrated, right? Like,
and I think one of the biggest arguments for that, I'm under the assumption, because I assume that they would have thought of this, I could be wrong, that Innisfil may not be very arable land. It may not be good farming land, because this comes back to a solution to what you're talking about, of this expansion that just generally comes from where the city is. More deliberate thinking and planning is definitely what we're lacking overall. Absolutely. And that's a good example of the opposite, which is good deliberate thinking, where you're thinking, okay, we're going to have to expand. We know this. More people are going to have kids. We're going to have immigrants. We're going to need more places to live. So let's put them in the spot that's good for that, and not cover some good farmland. For sure.
Yeah. I think you know, like our niece is thinking about getting into like city planning and that kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of cool to hear like younger people be excited about that type of thing, because in general, I feel like the younger generations, like our generation and younger, have like a little bit more of an open mind, because we realize this is our future. For sure. Like, whereas the people that are maybe in these positions right now, they're like, well, they might be in their 50s, 60s, and that's not to say they're not forward thinking. No, but it's not going to
there's less pressure
them the same way, right?
There's way less pressure when you're if you want to say over 50 is near the end of your life cycle, you would be accurate. And when you're near the end of your lifespan, like, what are your priorities? Your priorities are going to be enjoying what you have left. Like, and as humans, we actually start thinking about that way earlier than we should because our lifespan is so short.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even now, like, we're just under 30. Like, we have time left. We don't have that much time. When you look at how long that is, that's not a lot of years.
Yeah.
You know? And not to say we're old or anything, but we're getting
there. We are.
We're getting there.
Anyways, I'm excited to see kind of where it goes because
For sure,
I think we're going to see some changes in the way that things are played out.
And you see, I don't know, just kind of thinking in my head, just like you see a lot change of the whole stigma of farming too, we find. Like, because the more you get big cities and that kind of stuff, the more separated people are from where their food comes from, right? And it's kind of one of those things. Our farm, we've always been very open to people coming in. Like, I've never said no to anybody coming to the farm. And a lot of people just come and ask questions, right? Just curiosity. And by all means, like, if you have no connection with it, that separation is there. You don't know. So how would you ever think anything different, you know? And that's usually the mentality of 99% of farms that I hear. Like, everyone's just open door. Like, yeah, by all means, come on in. It's like that small town vibe of my door's unlocked. If you want to come in, come on in. You know what I mean? Like, it's very common that way. But the problem is the activists and the extremists, right? Because it's like, I understand vegans, vegetarians. I got nothing against them. Whatever they do in their own choices, that's totally up to them. They have very valid reasons for what they do. By all means, do your thing. But the problem is when they start trying to infiltrate farms and cause problems, right? For a few things. It's kind of like, one, it's not safe for people because farms are dangerous. Like, there's stuff on farms. We're not going to come out with a shotgun at you or anything.
No,
but it's
there's
like
big equipment
there's
everywhere.
Dangerous things everywhere, right?
Cows are big animals.
Exactly. So when you have people coming out on the farms not knowing there's a danger to that, a lot of them are going to go and release animals. Well, I get why you do it, but like, it's dumb because it's like, if they're going to go out to nature and be fine and eat grass. There's not enough food in nature to feed these animals.
You know what else is gonna happen? They're gonna get fucked up by wolves.
Yeah,
like they're gonna die a painful death. Get their jugular ripped out. Their guts are gonna be eaten while they're walking around. Like, that's I don't understand.
In front of traffic,
that's
like
it.
anything.
Get hit
They're
on
gonna get hit by a car. They're gonna kill somebody.
And
if you let a cow walk on the freeway, bro, you're killing people.
Yeah, it's just it's dumb. It's like, and I understand, like, to send a cow to a sanctuary or something like that. Sure, that's a great feel good thing. I understand why you do it and that stuff, but who funds that? Like, I've heard people say it's like, well, the rice and almond milk industry will fund that. They don't make near enough damn money to be able to fund that shit. You kidding me? But it's one of those things, and then I'm fine with dealing with animals because I love cows to my heart. Like, some of our cows, I treat them as family. I shouldn't say some. They all get treated as family, but I connect some of them as, like, personal connection, right? Like, you connect with a lot of them. So when people come in, you're going to just let them out in the world, but, like, that's family to us. Like, farmers have a really close connection with their animals. Otherwise, why would they do it, you know? So then it's like, even on the flip side, I've heard down in London a while back, they were letting mink go. Yeah, it's like, the whole fur-bearing process with mink is not that great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not for it by any means. But, like,
it's not my thing.
No, but, like, mink are vicious little animals. So, like, you're going to let them out to the ecosystem, they are going to kill everything. Yeah. Like, they're going to go, anything that's, like, bird-sized and smaller has no chance. And then you're going to screw with the ecosystem. And then does that really help them?
It's the same problem that they have for a different reason in like Florida with snakes. People have these big snakes and they let them out, and there's like all these massive snakes wandering around.
In Florida there was, I should say, a mammal that was like a larger rabbit, I think, or something. That's gone now. It doesn't exist in Florida because all the snakes have eaten it. Like, I think one of the biggest problems is that, in general, as humans, the first thing we hear about something, we usually take that as the baseline. Yeah. And then we compare everything else to it and try to disprove it. Which is a problem because if you live in the city and you've never been to a dairy farm, and then someone comes and tells you, like, look at this terrible thing they're doing to cows. This is brutal. This is the worst thing. Okay, that's your opinion. Yeah. And then now you compare everything else to it. And then but then maybe you know that person, they know other people, or you get involved in, like, this group or whatever, especially online with social media. It's just a big echo chamber of this is bad, we're not telling you anything other than this is bad, and then you never get to hear the other side. You don't even, and by the time you get exposed to it, you're not going to let that sway your opinion, right? You're not going to actually look at the big picture or actually think of the other side.
Well, that connects to, I think, gosh, it was a long time since we did our last episode. I apologize, guys. But I think in our last episode, we were starting to kind of talk about like outrage culture or we were going to get into it or something. Yeah. But that kind of connects to that, where like people see one side, it's a definitive answer. This is my opinion now. And they don't think about maybe the context of why things happened or the fact that like maybe that person just made a mistake. Yeah. And then, I mean, there's always limits and boundaries that you shouldn't cross.
Absolutely.
But
it's kind of,
I think overall we just kind of jump to conclusions.
And social media doesn't help, right? Because social media is a great thing. Like for getting information across and all that, it's fantastic. But it's one of those, you get a very negative stigma to it and that kind of stuff, right? Like I know there was an animal cruelty incident out in BC a couple of years ago with out in Chilliwack, BC. And it was brutal. It was very, very bad. Don't get me wrong. And it was a dairy farm, and they had videos of like pulling cows that got stuck out of stalls and like how they handled calves and stuff. And it wasn't great. And don't get me wrong, that's not the regular by any means. It's a bad apple, right? Yeah. Yep. But that gets so highlighted. Now the whole dairy industry does this, right? Every single farm beats the crap out of their cows. Every farm abuses all of them, right? It's like, no, that's like less than 1%. That's not even close. But it's when you get people that get more greed driven, then you lose that connection with them, right? And that's the ones that shouldn't be in farming anymore. And that's where a lot of Canadian dairy regulations and stuff are eliminating, right? Yeah. So you get a lot of those bottom end herds for the animal handling and stuff, their license is revoked. Yep. And then a lot of the activist things you see now, I always look at where it's from, because I found a lot of them are from like Israel or down in the States where it's like the bottom end farms. Yeah. And it's like, both of those areas have a lot less regulations than we do, right? It's a lot different management. They don't make the same money. Like it's just, supply management allows us to give a better, house basically to these cows. We have more money to be able to build these barns and that kind of stuff. And we can put it into infrastructure to help them have a healthier, happier life. Because basically the simple thing is a happy, healthy cow is a more profitable cow. So why do we ever do anything negative? It makes no sense from a business perspective. So even if you say you're greed driven, well, you're still going to care for them the best you can because you want to make the most milk out of them, right? From our perspective, we take care of them as best we can because you take care of them best you can. You know what I mean? Like it's just the thing you do. Like these girls give their lives to you, and you have a connection with them because you see them all the time. So you're gonna treat them the best you can, right?
Well, and it makes no sense to not take care of them and then have to treat them or buy new cows or whatever it is. It doesn't make any sense.
For sure. So it's one of those things. You get the bad farms, you try and eliminate those, but it's very uncommon. Like very, very uncommon. Yeah. Like we go down to the Royal Winter Fair every year. I bring a few kids from our area and we show calves down there. And it's a culture shock every time you go down, right? Like I'm a small town boy. It's one of those things. I don't get in Toronto that often, right? So it's like one, you get nervous because you're like, holy crap, there's a lot going on. But like it's a lot of it is just the general culture of people too, right? Like it's a whole different world. And
totally different.
And a lot of it's the questions, right? A lot of it's the skepticism and how could you do this and all this stuff. And it's like when you go to the Royal and you'll see cows tied up in a pack and everyone says like, this is the worst thing ever. They're tied up. They can't go anywhere. I said to them before, go untie them. They're not going to move. Yeah. I can guarantee they are happy and content. They are not going to go anywhere.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because my coworker was saying the one time they had some visitors on like one of the farms he was working at, and they were just like, "What? The cows aren't mooing. Why aren't they? I thought cows moo. Like, what's going on?" And he was just like, "The cow's happy. They're not going to be making noise. No. Like, these cows are fine. Like, they're not stressed. They're not, like, freaking out. 99% of the time, they don't move when they're, like, having a good time."
Yeah, you'll get them. They make some noise. They make a lot of noise if they have to, like, if they're in heat or something like that. But besides that,
but other than
not
that,
really.
Like,
not a whole lot.
So, yeah, there's definitely, like, there's so many misconceptions, and that's definitely a core problem of humans in general is not taking the time to actually like ask the questions, inquire, do your research. people love to jump to conclusions and just
Google Pete.
Google
We
Pete.
have this joke because instead of people like using Google, they just ask Pete.
and then they'll ask me a question, bro, and I'll just like open Google. Now Google the question they literally asked me and tell them the answer. I literally just Googled
like
it.
Right
so,
on stream.
Yeah.
Like we just Google it and we're like, all right, here's your answer.
That's hilarious.
Because you could have done it too.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, easily, right?
If there's one thing
that
I'd like you guys to learn from this episode, apart from how awesome cows and stuff are, it's that Google is your friend.
Google is your friend.
I say that all the time. Google is your friend.
It is.
Yep. So many people ask, like, it's all, I understand asking, like, a mentor, asking someone who you think will know the answer or this and that, but the biggest thing that you can take away from school in general is how to learn. And, like, realizing that learning doesn't stop. Learning doesn't stop at school. When you graduate, you don't stop learning. You're not done. Like, you get a job, so what? Keep learning. Like, keep asking questions. Keep, trying to figure things out on your own.
Absolutely.
If you don't know something, try and learn it.
The one thing with, like, pretty much every job I've had, as long as I'm learning and being challenged in the position, I'm fine. The second that stops, I'm done.
Yep.
And I just can't, like, I'm bored. I can't be in a spot where I'm not progressing or learning or something.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the coolest things about content creation is there's no end.
There's no end to it.
There's no end to anything. Like, there's always something for you to learn and improve on. Or, a new game to check out, or a new platform, or new ways to create content, or video editing. Like, it never ends.
That inquisitive thinking, right?
It never ends.
It's kind of, I've even seen videos of they have a cow in a stall, right? And she's just sitting there chewing her cud. Well, slow it down, black and white, put some sappy music to it. It looks brutal. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things. Just be very, I can't think of the word, but ask questions. You know what I mean? Like, just think, just ask more questions about it, and don't take everything super literally for what it is, right? Because a lot of things are very skewed and biased and that kind of stuff. And it's every industry. There's bad apples, there's bad bits, but majority is all good, and you need to kind of see more of the positive light than the negative light, because life's too short.
100%.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems I'm seeing with Twitter, one last thing, we do have to wrap this up quickly here because we got an appointment, but the one biggest problem that I'm seeing on social media lately is that there's this massive mob mentality, and it's really annoying because people mob on negativity.
They do.
And does that help anyone? No. It just increases negativity. Like, sure, maybe someone did something fucked up. Maybe someone did something bad. But you trying to get clout from, like, retweeting it and exposing them and, like, saying how terrible they are, or what a terrible thing this is, like, no. Then why? Like, is it really necessary? No. Just fight it with kindness. Fight it with being better. Fight it with leaving your mark on the world. And, like, the other thing I wanted to mention just about, like, the whole environment thing is that, and especially with the younger generations coming up, I think the biggest thing that we can do overall in general is not, like, force the corporations to do this, because we can't do that. We don't have the power to do that. They have way more money and power than we do. Right. It's not to, like, never use a plastic straw. Like, okay, yeah, maybe it helps a little, but that's beyond the point. It's keeping these things in mind, knowing the picture, understanding it, and if you don't understand it, keep asking questions, keep learning it, and having that as actual part of your decision making is going to go a lot further than anything else. Like, if we can get the majority of the human race to actually think about sustainability and how we're going to keep living and keep progressing, then maybe we'll get somewhere.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think that's a good note to end on. Yeah.
So it's been a blast. Again, this is my buddy Ryan. We'll record another intro to explain to you what's going on, but we will probably do this again. They're gonna hear that. I said that. I started talking about that. I was like, this was the stupidest sentence I've said in a long time. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Thanks for coming by. We'll probably have you on again.
Yeah, by all means.
Because I feel like people will have more questions.
More than happy to answer questions. It's one of those things when you have the disconnect, you don't know. Just ask. Just ask.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
If you want more of us, you can find everything BXP at babexpete.com, including links to all of our socials, YouTube, merch, and our discount codes for Into the AM clothing and Advanced GG energy drinks.
Our main focus is our live stream at mixer.com/babexpete, where we live stream video games and foster an amazing community. Peace.